Welcome. Hello, I'm Genevieve Marie.
I'm Lindsay Rousseau.
And this is our special Picard Aftershow. Just recently named.
Yes.
All right. So episode 3 is
Episode
out.
3.
We are out of fascist land.
We're out of fascist land. So episode 3 did a lot of the things that we were complaining about in episodes 1 and 2. So progress.
Did. Okay, so this show is taking me on a wild mental ride because there's just a lot of things that are completely polar opposite of each other when it comes to creating a fully fleshed out TV show. I feel like it cannot decide what it wants to do.
Right.
Because last episode we were talking about how we somehow ended up in fascist world, and that just seemed so
improbable, implausible. Yeah.
Implausible. It wasn't really grounded. It didn't felt like one of those like, oh, but like, what if this? And like people, it kind of felt like a writing prompt.
Yeah. Rather like than like
a prompt in creative writing rather than an actual like well thought out idea for a TV show that was going to have span multiple episodes.
Right.
That show in particular, that episode ended with them getting captured. So Lindsay and I supposed that they were going to spend more time.
Yes.
Like we knew time travel was going to happen, but we figured that they would be like maybe spending more time,
which was very concerning because we have no patience for fascist land. Like we were done. Yeah. We were done after one episode. So thankfully,
we thought they were going to stay in fascist world. They did not stay in fascist world. Thank God. They just got captured so then that they could have another.
We needed more explosion.
Unnecessary explosion.
Exactly. We added on an additional 5 minutes to the episode and a lot more explosions, but it served the plot in no means whatsoever. We still time traveled. We still crashed the plane in LA in 2024. So yeah, it was an excuse for,
The only thing that I can think of that I was like, oh, well, maybe this is a thing, but then like is the Borg queen and how she takes over the ship and then sends them into it was kind of like one of those like,
well, the other thing it did,
trust fall moments.
Yeah. The other thing it did, and this I fundamentally had an issue with. So the other thing that did was allow them to kill Elnor, which I was like, cool. So we just killed the only new member of the team. Awesome. And apparently we needed to do that. And I thought he was fun. He was a fun character. But apparently we needed to do that to give Rafi a reason to want to change the future, because fascist world was not reason enough for her to want to change the future. Now it's personal, which I just was like, did we need the extra reason, or are we just, okay, COVID hit, we're cutting cast members. He had to go back to Australia. I don't know.
Yes, that as I was watching it, I was like, oh no, like I was like, oh no, uh-oh. Because it seemed very, I don't know, very melodramatic to me.
Very melodramatic and very out of character for her too.
Yeah. And then you got everybody like, God, calm down. Like, and she's like, no, I won't. Like,
Picard literally looks at Seven and is like, she's too emotional for this. I'll go with her. I'll go too. Oh, and look, and we've split the party.
Right. It definitely felt like, whatchamacallit, like something out of an old 80s movie, like like Lethal Weapon, like, I'm so mad now, like Riggs is like pitching a fit, and then like Murtaugh is like, you gotta calm down, man. You're being over emotional about this. We gotta,
the world's ending, but my friend died.
Together. Yeah, that was very strange. I think you might be onto something there about maybe he did have to leave the
Yeah.
show.
So for obviously, I'm assuming most of you who watch this know that COVID hit the production, it shut down. We obviously have no idea how much that changed the script, but it did change it because Patrick Stewart subsequently was isolated and did have to film a lot of his scenes on a green screen by himself or with just one other person. Obviously, the rest of the cast, they're filming in LA because, you know, we had travel restrictions. So I'm going to say something happened. It was still going to be time travel, but COVID absolutely affected this production. Now we'd have to talk to the creators to know just what happened, what changes were made.
Right. What I am seeing is a patchwork of we're doing the best with what we've got under the circumstances that, you know, that we have. It's not ideal, and
but they did
really,
it, you know, so
they did it. It's not ideal. It does show in the final product, however, when, like I said before, when you are bandying back and forth between things that don't really connect, like the non-groundedness of fascist world to the streets of Los Angeles
right.
circa our time, and then they're like pointing out they're pointing out the homeless, they're pointing, you know, they're pointing out the homeless issue, you know, that crisis, and then they're pointing out like, oh, like rant, you know.
So we obviously, all the political commentary we were asking for in episodes 1 and 2, we get all of it now. So yeah, absolutely. Like you just said, we hit on immigration, we hit on the destruction of the environment, we hit on the healthcare system, but
we're getting both barrels right now.
Nothing, everything. Obviously this immigration one is going to continue on, but I mean, kudos for them for, you know, they wake up in Skid Row and that's the first thing they see. Now, the thing that confused me though is Seven looks at the fires burning and she says, oh, this is where it starts. You know, the fires destroy the water and the air, and that's how all of this starts. And I was like, well, wait, all of that led to fascism? Because wouldn't that lead, in my mind, I'm like, wait, there's more poor people now? Wouldn't that lead to, like, I don't know, a socialist revolution is what my mind was thinking.
Yeah, there's okay. So we had no social commentary, and the decision to basically, you know, go about things as if this was just like a fun exercise in creative writing, and we don't have to say anything to, we must say everything now all at once, and we are also not really going to grapple with any of the issues. We're just going to point them out and be like, this is what it is. Because nowadays I feel when big issues are actually pointed out, people lack the answers to the problems. And so it's like in all of the Marvel films nowadays, in which the villain, you can relate to them because they point out injustices in the world, and you know, they point out problems that we are facing, except they go too far in trying to fix them. But what's worse is that the heroes often ignore said problem, or they just don't have the answer.
Right.
And this is feeling a lot like that, where it's this, the other thing, the problem, you know, the issue that is still currently unsolved. We're going to point out all of this all at once so that you know that we're, you know, we're woke and we understand and we're Star Trek, but we're also just going to kind of push through, you know?
Yeah.
We're just going to continue and push through the narrative. These things aren't part of the narrative. They are like, it's like a little pepper on your Caesar salad. We're just gonna like pepper them in and just kind of let you know that they're there.
Yeah.
While we go through the bigger storyline. So I don't know what is, I mean, it's a little annoying
Well, I mean, I'm assuming the immigration conversation is going to have to keep happening because Rios has now been arrested. Though I will say the whole time they like weren't giving him his comms back, I was like, oh, they're setting him up for something because they made it so hard. I'm like, the kid literally could have just given it to it. The doctor literally could have just given it to him. The nurse literally could. Oh no, he could have gone back for it. Still didn't.
Yeah, they're trying real hard to make a thing happen. And they did the exact same thing in one of the not the immigration thing, but they did the exact same ruse with the, you know, going to a hospital, like don't go to a hospital, when they went back in time in the Star Trek movie with the whales.
Oh yeah.
Where they saving the whales. Yes. I just call it the whale movie.
The whale movie. Yeah.
And so they go through a lot of the same story beats, as if they thought that we forgot, or the majority of people watching had not seen that film. But
well, the other thing is
again, it's calling back to a lot. They're doing a lot of callbacks to things that already happened. Borg Queen, the whale movie, you know, there are a lot of things that are like the same but slightly different, and that alone is a little tiresome. I don't know. I mean, if you're going to do a time travel thing and you're going to do it with the, you know, Star Trek people, you're going to have a lot of overlap.
Yeah, I mean, this is true. I mean, you're trying to do something that's essentially been done and do it differently. And, you know, and again, I don't want people to think like we're just shitting on this to shitting on, you know, it's like, oh, you didn't have political commentary and now we're getting political commentary. It's like, no, we're, you know, it's that the show just, and maybe again, it hasn't found its groove yet, but when you only have 10 episodes in a season, as opposed to like CBS, your network television shows, which are 21 to 23 episodes, we don't have time to waste settling into the show. Like this is why streaming is a different beast, right? In that you don't have the traditional 23 episodes. You don't have your, you know, your commercial breaks. Yes, we're doing this weekly as opposed to all at once, but with all the content that's out there now, your audience doesn't have time to sit through 2-3 episodes to try and get into the show and keep going. They are going to give up on it. And that's what happened with me. Essentially, I went back to season 1, but I gave up on season 1 after like 2 episodes. Same thing with, you know, the only reason I got through the Book of Boba Fett was because I knew the Mandalorian was coming. Outside, I wouldn't have had time for it because there's so much other content out there, and explosions alone aren't going to keep me.
Right. And to go back to the like no political commentary versus all the political commentary thing, to go back to that, it's not necessarily like I just want to have it to have it.
Yeah.
You know, and that's kind of how I'm feeling with this episode, is that it's just there to have it there rather than be an integral part of the greater narrative. Right. You know, like V for Vendetta, whatchamacallit, Handmaid's Tale, like that is the point.
Yes, exactly.
You know, that is the point of the show. Like the crux of the narrative hangs on the fact that these people need to survive and or change the society in which they have found themselves in which they have found themselves being, you know, caught up in, being a cog in. And it's this show is divorced from that. Like the characters themselves are divorced from that because they come from a place in which they already are free, in which they already, you know, have an idyllic
right. Which begs the question, is there poverty in the future in the Star Trek universe? Because
I mean, technically no, because there's no money.
Right.
But it would probably be a resource thing, but like it would probably be like a resource scarcity thing.
Right.
I don't know, but but then you would have to imagine, you can't start in fascist world with, if you want to say a big thing, like if you want to say something big, or if you want to have sort of like a commentary on, how, like, what life is today, or some issue about uh life today or our society, you need to start with that world. You need to start with them in that world, not fascist world.
Yeah, and I think there's
so ungrounded.
There's other ways, and again, now, and I won't lie, like I was much more entertained and intrigued with episode 3 than I was with the first 2, because I was like, okay, cool, now we're gonna get some storytelling. Granted, it doesn't feel like Star Trek at all. It feels like CSI Space Force. It's like we've got immigration raids. I was like, what? I know Law and Order's back on the air, but dun dun dun, I was like, it's Law and Order in space, but we're in 2024. No, but I'm feeling that they could have done the quote unquote dystopian future perhaps differently, that maybe would have landed better and given it a little more plausibility. We don't need to see the Mad Max wasteland, that's been done, but it could have maybe been something more along the lines of like, there was more, maybe it's the discrepancies between the rich and the poor is more because the environment did crumble apart, and so like you were saying, the disparities between the haves and the have-nots, maybe there's still no money, but it's like this half of the world doesn't have any water and this half does. Like there's something else they could have done with that future that wasn't, fascist world, that would have felt different and new, and I'm not going to say refreshing because it's dystopian, but they could have done something else.
Right. You could have very easily dropped them into, I mean, not aesthetically, but whatchamacallit, but not aesthetically, but you could have easily dropped them into a situation like Blade Runner.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. Yeah,
they have in which they have the ocean, the seawall to keep the rising ocean back. They have, they have no actual real wildlife anymore. It's all synthetic, and the world is covered in trash and in cities, and like everybody's living on top of one another, and it's the world that is dying a very slow death. It's not quite there yet, but people are moving off planet. The people that are rich, or that are privileged, and can afford to, are moving off planet because Earth is dying, and it's only a matter of time until the clock runs out. That is a very interesting world to kind of grapple with and to live in, and to kind of take as a cautionary tale. Fascist world is not a cautionary tale. Fascist world is just a fantasy.
Because I would have been more afraid of something that you're like, which is why I think The Handmaid's Tale hit so many people so hard, because while it is a dystopian future, it's a future that unfortunately you don't have to think too hard to make that jump to where they are. And I think if Star Trek had done something similar to that, where it's like just enough out of the realm of possibility that can be like, oh shit, I could see how this could happen in 10
that
years.
That world is insanely authoritarian.
It is.
That world has uniforms, and they are, calling out what they consider to be the weak and the useless and the not like us's. But it feels more real because of the fact that they didn't go full on Star Wars Imperial officer uniform, like eradication.
They're wearing suits most of the time.
They're wearing, the ones in power are wearing suits, and you also have other places in the world that have not been sucked up into this fascist authoritarian regime.
Yeah. And there's still
Canada, there's a resistance.
Yeah.
There's a resistance. You have Canada taking on refugees. It's all, it's colored a lot different. There's a lot more layers and it's very dynamic.
Yeah.
Whereas this, they're going from a fantasy to this like thing that they're like, and now we're going to be grounded, but not so grounded as to not point out every little issue that our world has in the span of like 5 minutes or less.
Oh, it was less than 5 minutes. It literally was. Raffi shows up, she's in Skid Row, and then 7 comes and they're like, commentary about the haves and the have-nots, commentary about pollution. Oh yeah, what was it? How did society not collapse sooner with so many contradictions? Was literally one of the
right. Yeah, like somebody's getting mugged, and then there's the homeless encampments and the fires and the
also, God. I have to point out, Raffi was very, very, very comfortable taking apart a firearm that doesn't exist in her time period. I was like, damn, she took that gun apart. They don't have guns in 400 years in the future. How did she know all the parts and the things? Do they teach that in history?
We don't ask those questions.
I know. I was like, no. If you have never seen a gun before in your life, if you're able to take it apart like that,
Lindsay, we're not CinemaSins.
I just thought that was okay. And I have to say this because for those of you who don't know, I was in the Army. I'm an Iraq War combat veteran. So it's like you train a lot to know how to take apart and put together a weapon very quickly. And it's not a skill you're born with. And you can't just look at a gun and know how to do it. And I was just like, wow, you use phasers. And now you know how to use a handgun. Okay, cool.
Right. I do think I pinpointed my issue with the series.
Yeah.
I can't decide what it's trying to say. The moral of this story, or the lesson that must be learned, was so clear in the first episode, and then they lost the plot in the second episode, because the first episode they were talking to Picard like, why don't you have feelings for other people? Why are you always alone? Why do you separate? Like, you value life so much and yet you separate yourself from actually participating.
You flee to the stars.
Right. You flee to the stars. You don't participate. You are, you're a voyeur, you're a watcher. You don't, and we don't talk about that in either episode. I mean, you have the moments where the scientist, what's her name, goes into the Borg.
When she goes into her mind. Yeah.
Right, goes into her mind, and then when she enters the anger door, she kind of gives Picard the business. But other than that, like, it's not deep stuff that we're talking about or even delving in. In fact, Picard seems to be the smallest piece of this puzzle, to be honest. He doesn't really do that much.
Yeah.
It kind of is like the not the Mandalorian,
the Book of Boba Fett.
The Book of Boba Fett, where although he is still participating in the episodes, not enough for this to be named after him, not enough for the show to hold his namesake, and not enough to where the first episode was very much alluding to the fact that he was going to have a huge part in this, and that we were actually going to get a very interesting character study of why Picard is the way he is. We're no longer getting flashbacks of his mom. We're no longer getting really anything from him.
And Q set it up. I mean, literally, we had the whole beginning of episode 2 was nothing but exposition by Q telling Picard all of the things he had done wrong, and the whole reason Q has sent them back to this dystopian alternate reality is because of Picard. And all of a sudden now it's not maybe we'll get it between Picard and Agnes. Maybe there's something going on there. But yeah, it's like, we literally spent an episode and a half talking about how it's all about Picard and his inability to connect. And again, Q was saying a whole lot of things about him that I didn't quite understand when they're in the, fascist world. And he's like, this is the only way you know how to live. And I was just like, I don't understand what you're commenting on right now. But yeah.
I just don't see how these things connect. Well, I don't see how they're connecting well. That's my problem. And I know, again, COVID probably had a lot to say about how much or how little rather we see of, Patrick Stewart and of Picard. And I'm sure that really hindered the process and script and all of that. But at the same time, I would expect that a show named Picard would also be interested in focusing in on that character, really putting that character under a microscope, or at least showcasing them. And I really haven't seen, yes, I know they're a crew and it's a team effort, but I really haven't seen very many standout moments for him as a character. And so I think that's where this show is kind of losing me, is you have all of these ideas that they're trying to put forth. And with you have the first Borg queen, which is supposed to kind of be like, oh, this is our big bad. And then it's like, no, Q is the big bad. And it's like, okay, that's cool.
And then we have another Borg queen.
And then it's just like, oh, and now they're going to have to deal with this Borg queen. And then also fascist world. We have to deal with fascist world. And then
and now we also have to deal with 2024 racist cops and immigration policies. And it feels like a couple different shows in one. And I will say, if the acting wasn't as strong as it was, this show would have lost me a lot sooner. And I think this is, again, we keep talking about the Book of Boba Fett, but I think it's the best parallel that we have right now, where that was just chock full of writing problems, just so many writing problems. But unfortunately, they didn't have the cast to try and carry that. Here we've got a situation where the writers can't, or, production can't quite seem to know the story they're trying to tell. But gosh darn it, those actors are doing the best they can to make the most of what they got. And bless their hearts, you know what? I will fucking believe anything that comes out of Patrick Stewart's mouth. So, kudos to the cast, because I will say their performances are at least holding my attention while I'm asking all these other questions.
Right. Also, I do want to say, because I believe this is a direction thing. Picard in this seems so timid.
Yeah, I was thinking that too.
So almost feeble in a way, where it's like, you are an admiral and you make command decisions all the time, or at least you did when we were an active admiral and not retired. Where is that? What happened? That's what I want to know. What happened between him, retiring from Starfleet to, grow his grapes and all that, to now, to where it seems like he is almost an unwilling participant in what's happening. He is not furthering the plot, and that's kind of annoying too,
because the other characters are all essentially making the big decisions.
Right. His character is not actively making big choices to further the plot, or his character or anybody else's characters. He just seems very like an unwilling participant in this whole thing, and it's confusing to me. It seems like a direction thing, it seems, because the script doesn't give him that much to do, Sir Patrick Stewart has to make character choices that makes sense in the moment and for the
Right.
script. So if his character is literally not doing or not saying anything of note or consequence, he's going to have to figure out a way or a reason why that is. And it seems to be like a confidence thing that he's decided to kind of lean on, you know, lack of confidence thing that he's decided to kind of lean on. And it's like, but why and where is this coming from?
Yeah.
Because it's not like he hasn't dealt with like crazy shit before, like Borgs and all the
I'm
other,
assuming the end of the universe at various times.
Universe, all other manner of things. What has him so emotionally shaken here? I mean, and he's dealt with Q before.
Yeah.
Like I haven't
but
seen
this is a different Q. This is
but...
an unwell Q, which also I was confused by. Well, what about Q? Anyways, let us know your thoughts. Are we being overly harsh? Are we right on? You know, do you agree with us? What do you think? let us know in the comments, obviously. And of course these are just our opinions, but
you're just a bunch of fucking hypocrites.
We're just a bunch of nerds that talk about nerd stuff.
Gave you what you wanted and now you don't want that anymore.
No more political commentary for you.
Seriously, oh god. And I didn't even really want, like, it doesn't even have to be, oh god, I don't even know. I don't even want
it's the whole, like, you know what, we're not in the writer's room, but we know it. And again, I'm like, yeah, I mean, we're over time, but it's just like, you want to see political commentary about like the haves and the have-nots, dude, watch The Expanse, man. Watch The Expanse. They flipping nailed it. I mean, there's a reason it's like one of the greatest sci-fi shows of the past 20 years. So yeah, do all the things that you do with the YouTubes, the likes, the subscribes, the comments.
Whoever. All right.
And we will see you all next week.